hello there. I'm telling everybody in live stream the answer to this question. Like, why aren't you on vacation? Well, the reason why is I booked a package through Travelocity, flight and hotel. And, of course, I showed up. I've never been late to anything in my life, as far as I recall. And then it's American Airlines. First they postponed the flight by 5 hours, and then they canceled it. And I called up American Airlines, and it was really funny. They said, yeah, we could change you could fly out in a couple days here. We're going to, it's an economy booking. We want to charge you, I think it was $540. I was like, well, you're the one that messed up. Why on earth would I pay money to change, what you messed up? Oh, yeah, that's the way it works, And 85% of the cost was the hotel. And the hotel was extremely rude, like beyond horribly rude. And I was like, oh, you should have, if you wanted to cancel it, which I didn't want to cancel anything, you should have canceled it 7 days ago. You can't give your money back now. It's like, well, I didn't know until like an hour before the flight when everything was delayed and then canceled, so that's completely ludicrous. Of course, most of the world is ludicrous these days. Nobody can think logically or rationally anymore, as it turns out. So I've had 18 phone calls over 48 hours to try to get the money that they don't want to give back to me, Travelocity as an entity. And I think it'll be successful. I've already made a claim with the credit card, but it's just been an uphill battle. I would never, ever again in the future even dream of booking anything on line again. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I kind of give up. It's like the universe is telling me not to take a vacation. So I know that's what you're going to ask. You're going to say, why aren't you on vacation? And that's the reason why. I don't know if you know this or not, but the Dutch have told every single citizen to go out immediately and buy a 72-hour survival kit. I'll let you make of that what you will. In these countless videos, people want me to simplify things. By the way, I have this chart and a bunch of other charts, but this is a chart that I made up yesterday for you to, it doesn't get any more simple than this. And this is also, too, the reason, in a nutshell, why everybody's confused. It wouldn't take you 3 minutes, wouldn't even take you that long, to read this and take a look at this chart. Go to my Substack, which is in the description below, and it's called Purity. And by purity, I mean epistrophe, transcendence. Epistrophe, of course, is concentration. And people keep asking me, well, what's the methodology of theurgy? I just don't get it. And this is the reason why people don't get it. You have, of the 4 constituent components of life, which is soul and its attribute, and then we have consciousness, and then we have body. 3 of these are totally impure. I leave out mind as far as, not mind, but mentation. Thought/mentation. Unfortunately, in English, mind, brain, and consciousness are synonymous, which is very unfortunate. But mentation or thought is just a sub-mechanism of consciousness. So that's why I left that out. It is, of course, definitionally impure. It starts immediately in time and ends in time. But this is the reason why everybody's confused, are these 3 things which are impure that people think you can purify. Obviously the body is totally impossible. Obviously consciousness, obvious to me and every aspect of Greek, Indian, Egyptian, metaphysics, Advaita Vedanta, the Upanishads, on and on and on, all say the same thing, but existential consciousness. And also, too, the attributional side of the soul, as no different than the absolute, is also, too, impure, that being a modulation. But this is why everybody's confused. Liberation transcendence confuses, the common being, who is, of course, ignorant definitionally, and I'm not, just everybody is. You wouldn't have been embodied if you weren't ignorant. They don't understand the nexus, or the epicenter of wisdom. Of course, the attribution of the soul leads to false identity with and as either consciousness or in profound ignorance with the body. In other words, when you brush your teeth, the meat suit that you see in the mirror, you identify with, that's me, that's who I am, which of course is absolutely not the case. It's total impurity. This, of course, is the perpetuation or the roller coaster that you can't get off of, which, by the way, the word samsara, which means the cycle of misery, literally samsara means to go round and round. Basically, like the roller coaster you can't get off of. It's like, why can't I get off? It's because you keep identifying with the roller coaster or the ride. It's like, oh, we've had a lot of dips recently, but there's going to be another, big climb here soon, which of course is no different than a cycle. People say, well, how do you engage in it? And I say, well, how do you purify gold? And they don't get it. And I say, well, what's the opposite of dilution? And immediately everybody will say, well, of course it's concentration. But concentration implying what? My wife gave me this. This is 14 karat gold. I thought 14 karat was 56% gold. But 14 karat is 58%. In other words, 41%, 41.7 to be precise, of what I'm holding here is alloyed with the gold. Usually it's silver and a little bit of nickel, or silver and some copper. The more coppery looking gold has a greater copper content in it. Everybody's seen that. May not have identified with it, but gold is gold is gold. The soul is the soul is the soul. But the attribution of the soul, which is impure, meaning modulation or a frequency or avidya, illumination. Once again, this chart is in my Substack, my latest Substack entitled Purity, which of course equals avidya. Bhava or vritti, which of course means modulation, equals of course entrapment and embodiment, the phenomena thereof. Bhava and vritti just means becoming and disturbance in ancient languages. I know you don't know ancient Pali or Sanskrit, but it's no different than the attribute, or the 41% of this gold necklace that my wife gave me that is not gold. Pure bullion grade is either 999 or quadruple 9 gold. In other words, it's essentially 100% gold, except for a couple, infinitesimally small dots of that which is not gold. So gold is gold is gold. So when people talk about purification and say, well, what am I purifying? How am I concentrating something? Anything that, of course, is under frequency or disturbance is diluted. The dilution of the soul is no different than the attribute of the soul. Yeah? The first two digits of the Fibonacci sequence are 1 and 1. Light and illumination, the extrinsic attribute, i.e. the dilution. Now, this methodology, whether it be Greek, Indian, Egyptian, and it's in Pali or Greek or Sanskrit or Aramaic, all the exact same thing. It goes by these different words, and there's still a few others, ones you've probably never heard of. Epistrophe, apophatism, via negativa, neti neti, janna, which means to burn, from the word jayate. When you're burnt, kind of like, smelting gold or silver or anything else, you're trying to purify it, you got to melt it up, and you have to have a methodology of concentrating the gold. That would be like taking this 14 karat and making it 100% gold, right? From the word jayate, you're burning away objective defilements. But people still get confused because they think purity is somewhere in consciousness. But that's impossible. It has a beginning in time, and anything has a beginning in time has an end in time. It's consubstantial, and consubstantial means the byproduct of two or more things. White light through a red filter, you have red light. White light through a blue filter, you have blue light. Well, the blue light is a combination of two things, the white light and the blue filter, or the white light and the red filter. It has a beginning in time and an end in time. Obviously and logically so. Goes by anamnesis, samadhi, theurgy, Platonic recollection. Also, too, goes by sati, and the Greek word for sati is mneme. It means recollection, but not conventional recollection. Anyway, of this living being and its four constituents, of course, up here we have two constituents, the principle and the attribute, which is identical to the first two digits of the Fibonacci sequence, or what you call the golden ratio, which is 1 and 1, principle and attribute. Well, the attribute, of course, is a modulation. This is no different than saying illumination. Illumination is no different than saying a frequency of light, because nobody has ever seen light. This is the dark light. There's two lights and two darknesses and all logical, rational, monistic metaphysics. If you understand the two lights and the two darknesses, you really can understand kind of everything. This is no different than magnetism and the dielectric, because magnetism is like the second one and the dielectric is like the first one. The plane of inertia would really be the first one. These are two different words to refer to the same thing. Principle and attribute, or a holos, is a nice Greek word which basically means a whole. These two things that are inseparable, like the magnetic and the dielectric, light and illumination. The one and what the one does. The second one, the Greeks called the euristostaias, they called it tolma, they also too called it an anankie. But anyway, of the living being and its four constituents, the soul and its attribute, consciousness and body, phenomena, of course, are impure. These things are impure. This is why human beings, conventional, regular, everyday human beings, don't understand the nexus of transcendence. You know, what's to be focused on? Well, you can't focus on the subject objectively, so this idea of, trying to think your way out of a thinking box is utterly impossible, irrational, and illogical. But true liberation ontology, of course, is hyper-rational. I never use the word meditation because it literally means practice or ritual, but nobody knows that except for a handful of geeks like me. The term itself doesn't refer to anything specifically. I have an article about this too in the description of this video. It's like rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic, which is what people think is effectual. And of course, that's impossible. I don't know if you've ever heard that old humorist saying about, you're rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic. I even think that's from the movie Fight Club. It means you're doing nothing. You're doing what seems like something, but you're not really doing anything. Practices and rituals. This, from the Greek word milite, we get meditatio in Latin. In meditatio, we get this silly English word, which is totally undefined, called meditation. What are you doing? I'm doing meditation. Like, oh, okay, great. You're not saying or telling anybody anything. What I'm saying of this word that goes by many different names, which is the true theurgy, and I can't say practice or ritual. What do you do? I'm practicing meditation. Practices and rituals are rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic. Once again, you can't arrive at wisdom, or nor are you engaging in theurgy by doing so. I got another chart below, and it's about, it's a bulb, and it passes through a point source, and this is where we have spatially coherent light. This is how we made holograms before lasers existed. That would be pinhole light, or mind. And then, of course, we have a wavelength filter, which is, and that's a diagram also, too, in the Purity article that's on Substack in the link below. The wavelength filter means it is self-reflexive, i.e. wisdom, like a laser. Like, red laser light on any color of anything. You're still going to see the red laser light, right? Here, I think maybe my batteries are dead. Anyways, it's a red laser. Whenever you point a green or a red laser at, it's still red or green. Doesn't matter what color it hits. It doesn't take upon itself the attribution of anything. Maybe my batteries are dead. Anything that it comes in contact. There we go. Anything it comes in contact with. All the colors in my hand here. It doesn't matter where it falls. You still see the red light. It doesn't take upon itself that which it encounters. That would be the phenomenal analogy or analog of transcendence. Talk about a pinhole aperture and then a wavelength filter. Both are spatially coherent. They're anti-spatial vectors that are self-referential. Of course, the light isn't anti-spatial, but the mind is. And by being self-directed, it is encapsulated. It's kind of analogous to circular frequency. Circular frequency when it comes to light, super high capacitance light, which is hydrogen. But of course even matter has beginning time and end of time. We can't take that analogy too far. The ancient three passages, which makes it really simple, the Nikayas stacked up, and I've been through all the Nikayas easily hundreds of times. It's ancient Pali. Would stack about 7 feet tall. Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya and Gotara Nikaya, Kodaku Nikaya. Huge, enormous number of books. I could take 4 passages here and stick it all in a nutshell, because that's what people want. Like, I don't have time for that. What I'm doing, by the way, in this video is taking way over 1,000 books and sticking it into a 20-plus minute video. And it makes it simple. And looking at this chart only takes you 3 minutes to read. That's all this chart takes. Take you 3 minutes, roughly. Well, if you read it really slowly and think about it, say 5 minutes. Well, these things are impure, therefore they're not the point of focus. And I need to remove the attribute of the soul, which of course is the impetus for embodiment, and by removing that attribute, then this is transcendence. That is theurgy itself. Gold is gold is gold, so, this is gold. Like, yeah, that's gold. This is probably now a $4,000, actually probably $5,000 gold necklace. Yeah, but it's only 58% gold. Exactly. Gold is gold is gold. So what are we talking about when we say concentration? You're burning away the things of that which are not that. The silver and or a little bit of copper that's amalgamed with this, since it's 58% gold, would be analogous to the attribute or the frequency, the disturbance thereof. The gold is here, but it's scattered among 41.7% of other things that are not gold, right? Of course it's right. It's 100% undeniable. If you think about that for 2 minutes, maybe 5, you can figure out what theurgy is. This dissubjectification. Through objective negation, I'm engaging in subjective synthesis. You're engaging in gold purification, analogously, of the soul away from false identity. False identity is, of course, rooted in the attribute of the soul, avidya. This isn't, by the way, this is taking 1,000+ books, and I mean this literally. If I'm lying, I'm dying. This is taking this chart alone. Not this video alone, this chart alone, is taking 1,000 books and sticking in a chart that you could read in 5 minutes. And if that's not boiling it down, then nothing is boiling it down. Anyway, I'm going to use 3 passages, all I take. The purification of one's own nous or mind or spirit, take your pick, means the light or jyoti within one's mind or spirit is the very soul. Yeah? Ekagachitasa, that's just one compound word. That means the self-directed nous or spirit or mind. Mind is not to be confused with consciousness. Unfortunately, in English, mind and consciousness as terms in the dictionary are like the same thing. But they're not, from the perspective of the Greeks, Indians, and Egyptians, Advaita Vedanta, the Upanishad, the Vedas, original Buddhism, and boy do I mean original, not that stuff out there today that calls itself Buddhism. Last little passage, this is Samyutta Nikaya 5.74. Tittam chittam ajatam susantitam suvimutam. I know nobody knows ancient Pali. It's been a dead language for 2,000 years. What this means is that the will, or the nous, i.e. the chitta, steadfast upon its very self. In other words, self-reflexive. That's removing of defilements. Removing of defilements is no different than saying, I'm going to take this 14-karat gold and turn it into 100% gold. But I have to figure out a way to extract the silver and copper out of this, which is 41.7%. I have to figure out a way, or know the methodology to remove the non-gold from the gold that's here. Well, this gold, yeah, it is, but it's impure. 10-karat gold's worth a whole lot less than 14-karat gold, and 14 carats worth a lot less than 18-karat, and 18 carats worth a whole lot less than bullion grade, which would be 999 or quadruple 9 gold bullion. I used to buy gold and silver bullion ages ago. The illumination of mind, of course, equals the frequency, and of course the frequency, of course, is dilution or attribution. This, of course, is embodiment. So I tell people, what do you think the opposite of dilution is? This is what theurgy is. But it is not an object to focus upon. That's why the word for samadhi and jhana is jayati, which means to burn. You're burning away something that is not that which you inherently and ultimately are. And I mean ultimately are. Because everybody thinks they're the meat suit in the bathroom mirror, or they think they're consciousness. I'm going to purify my consciousness. Well, you can't polish a poo. Don't take that too literally, okay? I saw a Mythbusters episode where they did polish a poo. It's like, don't stop taking that so literally, okay? Can't polish the poo of consciousness. Impossible. It has a beginning in time and end in time. It's consubstantial. It's comprised of two things that had a beginning in time. You therefore logically, impossibly, cannot purify it. And everybody gets caught up in this quote-unquote breath meditation. Well, breath is the frequency, and that's metaphysical analogy for how to engage in theurgy. The breath is the frequency of life. Without this frequency, i.e. breath, you ain't going to live too long. You know, you stop breathing, you're very quickly going to stop living, right? It's the between the frequencies, i.e. the rest, because there's a frequency on the magnetic field. That frequency, of course, is the magnetism itself, but the plane of inertia, which is the rest nexus between the breath, literally magnetism is the breath of the dielectric. Fact, by the way. That which is between both is the point of focus, but you can't focus on it objectively. You focus on it by removing the attribute or the modulation thereof. True theurgy, true metaphysics is hyper-rational and super-hyper-logical. Very, very much so. Once again, I do mean this chart that I created yesterday encapsulates what people went through 1,000 books to come to the realization of. This is keeping it simple. It don't get more simple than this. Also, too, if you understand the two darknesses and the two lights, you'll kind of understand everything. The darkness of the one, which of course is not an object, and you can't see it because the light is not its attribute or illumination. And then there's the second darkness, which is the darkness or shadow cast by matter. One darkness, of course, is purely unreal, i.e. the shadow of matter. And one darkness is the only ultimate reality, i.e. the one, or the agathon. There's also, too, the two lights. The true light of the one, which is itself dark, or it's sometimes referred to as the dark sun. The second light, of course, is the false light, as illuminated of matter, where matter is, of course, illuminated, just like everything that you're watching this video is illuminated matter. Yeah. The second light, of course, is the false light, is illuminated of matter. But the illumination or the beauty of the second light, or the false light, or the beauty of matter, only has beauty due to the transcendent logos of the one. Fools confuse light with illumination, and fools also, too, confuse true light with the false light. The beautiful as things that are seen, you know, a beautiful person, or the beauty of this, and this, of course, is encapsulating the golden ratio, only has beauty due to the logos and the illumination, or the imprint and the false light. This is not beautiful. I mean, this is very fragile. I could crush this in an instant, and it wouldn't be beautiful anymore. If I could destroy this beauty, then it is not true beauty. It is a logos of matter and of illumination and the reflected illumination upon the matter. And of course this matter casts a shadow, as does all matter. If you can understand the two darknesses and the two lights, you really can understand the nexus of everything. There's like 5 graphs, and I want you to study. One's just a light bulb, and then there's a pass filter, or spatial coherence, or pinhole filter, and then there's a wavelength filter. If you actually study that, then you'll also, too, understand a lot of stuff. This is how you could take an everyday light bulb and create lasers. Because laser is point source light. Lasers don't create this invisible beam, and not always invisible, I know, invisible beam that people think. But every laser that's, you know, that pinpoint, that actually has some lenses in front of it, where it's taking the point source light and concentrating it. That's something else. Laser light is point source light. People say, well, laser light is coherent light. Light amplification, stimulated emission, radiation is coherent light. Well, attributionally that's correct, but that's not what defines a laser. If you actually study that little diagram that's in the the publishing that I did a few hours ago called Purity on Substack, you'll understand it very quickly. And it's incredibly important. You'll understand the spatial coherence and self-reflexivity of a subject upon and as itself, and not as anything else. Point source light that is also, too, attributionally coherent, once again, does not take upon itself any attribution with, well, once again, it stopped working, any attribution of itself upon or with anything else. Just like white light on anything, of course, you see different colors and spectra, but coherent radiation that is also, too, point source radiation, or what we typically call laser radiation. I think it's an issue with the, there we go. This actually makes a tiny little slit. Lasers are fascinating. This, of course, is a multiplicative effect of point source illumination. Lasers are fascinating. But people don't understand lasers. It's point source light. True transcendence is no different than making thy very soul like a laser. Not perfect analogy, but pretty darn close. It does not take upon itself. And this, when that happens, then if one is not deceased, as is almost usually always the case, then this is what we mean by the dead man walking. So study this little super simple chart that I created for you, and it'll explain everything. And this is 1,000 books wrapped up into a, read it in 5 minutes diagram. And it doesn't get more simple than this. And I'm proud of the fact that there's nobody out there that's created a chart this simple, or even close to it, to tell you the what, the why, and the how. And this is, once again, what confuses everybody. Because there's no purity here, there's no purity here, and there's no purity in the modulation of the divine, or that which thy truly are. Tattvamasi, aham brahmasmi, or the term Tathagata. Someone that's fulfilled the eulogy is called Tathagata. Tathagata is just an ancient Pali word, which means you, that thou art. Tat is a reference to Brahman, or the Absolute. Agata is past tense. It means having arrived at. In other words, past tense means you have already arrived at that. That with a capital T. It's usually translated as thus gone one or thus come one, and it's just totally nonsensical. It means you've arrived at the Absolute. It's a simple little term is what the word Tathagata means. So, let me know if you have any questions. Any donation is always warmly welcome. I've been doing a lot of live streams lately. I'm bummed out that I didn't get my vacation, and I'm having to struggle to get my funds back from that. But, as we say, that is samsara, unfortunately. Yeah, it's cold and nasty out. It'll be warm in here in a few days. Maybe I'll do a staycation. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, check out my Substack where this is at, and thanks for watching.